Well, this practice is a type of practice that I like to do in the colder time of year, maybe even particularly around the holiday season, or it could also be a class that would be really good if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed or overstimulated. Because we're going to work with something in traditional Chinese medicine called the triple burner, sometimes also called the triple heater. And it's triple because we're going to work with sort of three zones of the torso. This upper part of the torso, which correlates with lung and heart. Then we have this middle part, which is more like digestion and stomach and spleen. And then this lower part, which is about elimination. So it's intake, assimilation, elimination, and although sometimes maybe near the holidays, we might think of that like through food and nourishment and the things that we eat. But it's not only that, it's literally all of the sensory input that we take in. So, all those conversations, the busyness at work, all of that as well. So, really, on a deeper level, this class is about processing information, processing your feelings, processing how you're doing today. So that's really what it is at a deeper level. With that, we'll start with this upper burner, which will be heart and lungs mainly, and a focus on the breath. So we'll get our blanket and hold it in a rectangular shape. You can use any kind of blanket. You could even use a bath towel, that works well. And if you have a blanket like mine, you'll want to roll it from that long edge. And if you've been sitting at a desk a lot or feeling kind of tighter through the chest and or shoulders, you might only want to roll it about half of the way. If you're feeling more open through the chest, you could roll it all the way. And this will become our heart roll. This will be right underneath the center of the chest, right underneath the sternum. Some of you might also want to have a little pillow or a blanket for your head. So I'll show that way. So you'll lower down and you're aiming to get this heart roll, this blanket roll right underneath the sternum, right underneath like the back of your beautiful lungs. And then your arms will be right above the blanket roll so that they can either be in a T shape or a little bit of a W. The blanket or the little pillow under the head is optional, but for some people, it provides the right amount of support for their head, their neck, their shoulders. And then the last thing to consider here is what you do with your legs, and you get to pick. So some people, it might be bent knees. Sometimes I like to have my knees together and my feet wide. Other days, I like my legs long. You could even do butterfly with the legs if you wanted to. So the primary focus is this slight feeling of stretch and openness across the lungs and the chest. The lower body is more based on comfort. And the key with a yin practice is to dial in an appropriate amount of intensity for where you are today. So if you think of a scale from 1 to 10, typically in yin, we're somewhere between a 2 and a 6 as far as stretch or sensation. But if you're recovering from a cold or maybe an injury, you might want your sensation to actually be 0, in which case you can use more props for support. And now that our physical body is set up in the pose, we can focus on prana, your energetic body, which is carried on your breath. Breathing in and out through your nose if possible, although breathing through your mouth works too. Notice the sensation in your lungs as your lungs expand on your inhale. With the aid of the blanket roll beneath you, creating even more space. The lungs, the breath, it's our first interface from the outside world to the inside world. The outer chi in our environment becomes our inner chi. The breath is the very first thing we do when we arrive here. It will be the very last thing we do before we go. And it's something we'll do every single day in between. The taking in and the letting go. Two more cycles of your breath with the heart roll, creating that extra opening in the chest and the lungs. And then we'll take our time to come out of the heart roll. And you can do that by rolling to your side and simply sliding out the blanket. And then we'll return to our back. You can keep the pillow under your head if you'd like. But as we lie here for a moment, you'll notice a different sensation as your body had gotten used to the support of the heart roll. And now as we continue with the upper burner, we'll come into banana asana. This is one of my favorite poses actually for the chest and the lungs. So you start in shavasana with both hips, both shoulders on the floor. You'll take both legs over to the right side, and then you're curving your upper body to the right side as well. So you look like a little parentheses bending to your right. And then from here, you have options. One of those options is to take your arms overhead, and that's going to really invigorate this lung, this heart area that we're looking to do. But you could also have a bend in your elbow if that's better. And if that aggravates your shoulder or doesn't feel comfortable, you can just rest your hands on your torso. And then the other consideration here is the legs. You might want to keep them side by side, or you might want to cross your right ankle on top of the left. If that doesn't quite feel right either, you could try your left on top of your right. Nice, full, complete breath. In the meridian framework, the heart correlates with fire, the fire element. The lungs correlate with metal. So when fire and metal come together, we create the ability to bend, be malleable, be flexible. It's the magic of alchemy, of transformation, when those two elements come together. One more cycle of your breath, and we'll unwind the body, come to the center, and we'll pause in Shavasana. Tune in to your inner landscape. See if there's anything that's different. Most things will be the same, but maybe you notice more space in your ribs or your hip, your jaw. Sometimes the transformation is in an unexpected place. And we'll now practice bending to the left. So both legs over to your left. Your upper body curves to the left as well. And you're adding arms overhead if possible, or they could have a bend and be more like a W shape. You could experiment with legs side by side or arms overhead. Metal and fire reminds me of the story of the Tin Man and the oil can. And sometimes I feel like the Tin Man, kind of stiff throughout my day. But when we come to the fire of our practice, sometimes it creates just enough warmth that we feel more flexible, more like the oil can has created movement at the joints. Take a moment to check in with the expression on your face. See if maybe you can soften your forehead or your jaw. One more cycle of your breath here. And once again, we'll come to the center in Shavasana. Pause and notice. All right, we'll do one more pose for this upper burner, which is all about intake. And we'll start by hugging the knees into the chest. And as you do that, just ease your way in. You don't have to hug them in all the way at first. You can take your time with that. Can sway or rock. Just notice how something so deceivingly simple like hugging your knees into the chest can really create such a nice sensation at the lower back. Now we'll take this into a twist, taking both knees over to the right. Having done a side bend first, hopefully this feels extra good. And things you'll want to think about are supporting your lower body. So for a lot of people, that might be props underneath the knees and or between the top and the bottom leg. So you can play with that, see what feels good. Notice your lower body is turning to the right. Your upper body is moving in the opposite direction. And then to bring in the heart and lung, that left arm is slightly overhead. So you want either your hand to be touching the floor or a prop and or the elbow. So you don't want the arm just hanging in midair. You want your arm to be able to relax on a surface. And if it doesn't quite do that, just lower it a bit until it is relaxed. Here we're opening through the left lung, the meridians that run through the underarm on the left side, down the arm to the hands and the fingers. The air isn't something that many of us think about too often because many of us live in places with good air quality. But if you've ever been in a place where maybe there's a fire, a forest fire, or a city with lots of pollution or bad air quality, you notice it pretty quickly, and it can be quite irritating to the lungs, the eyes, maybe even your skin. If you happen to notice your arm getting a little numb or tingly when it's overhead, then that's your body asking you to lower the hand. And if you haven't already, lowering that left arm will bring the knees to the center. Hug the knees into the chest, maybe a little sway or a rock. And then we'll set up for the left side. So both knees over to your left, supporting the legs as you like. And this side might have a different set of needs than the first side, so adjust accordingly. And then we bring in the lung, the heart by taking the right arm overhead. Remember, you want the right arm to be able to rest comfortably. The gift of the breath. Something most of us take for granted most days. Few more cycles of our breath here. And we'll start to bring the arm down, hug the knees into the chest. And then we'll pause, either in constructive rest with the feet on the floor nice and wide with the knees narrow, or Shavasana. Now we'll move to sort of the border between the upper burner and the middle burner, finding Sphinx pose. So we'll roll over onto the front of our body and set up for this kind of subtle back bend. So the legs are about hip width apart, but they can be wider than that or more narrow than that. Hip width apart is just the starting place. Elbows underneath the shoulders, palms of the hands can be together, which is most comfortable for me, but for some people it's palms down. So either way is great. And as we're in this position, you'll notice, of course, sensation in the upper burner, the shoulders, the chest, but we also feel a little compression with our stomach against the floor. And that middle section of the body, the stomach, the spleen, is all about assimilation, digesting, whatever it is we're digesting, whether that's conversation, a meal, lots of sensory overload. Maybe we've had an emotional day. If you wanted to bring in a little more earth, you could bend the knees. So you're still in Sphinx, but the knees are bent, which will bring a little bit more pressure to the top of the legs where this meridian runs on the top of the quads. The quality here in this middle burner is the quality of mulling things over or sort of marinating on an idea. So if you did bend the knees, we'll go ahead and re-lengthen the legs. And then we'll lower down and rest our head on our hands. From here, we'll flip over onto our right side. One of the things I love about yin is that it's rolling around on the floor, one of my favorite things. We'll come into half saddle. So I'm going to show a couple different variations that you can try. The second variation will be one that's the most gentle on the knees. So one way to do it is for your left hand to come to your left shin, and sometimes I'll hug the knee into the chest here, and then it's a little easier to take the foot back. You could also do this with a strap if you have a strap or a belt handy. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking to get a mild stretch here on the top of the thigh. So this is one variation. If that doesn't feel good to your knee, let me find my prop behind me. What you could do is rest your top leg on a prop. So in this case, I'm resting my knee on a bolster, but it could be on a block, a piece of furniture, your favorite pet. And while that's definitely more subtle for the thigh, it's still in kind of the same neighborhood of poses. So if you have anything going on with your knee, or if reaching for the foot just isn't happening today, you can try this instead. Then what we do is we literally marinate in the pose, giving ourselves opportunity to process our day. I find that these middle burner poses for stomach and spleen, we don't need to hold them quite as long because they're pretty potent. We just have a few more cycles of your breath here. And we'll start to come out of the pose and just pause there on your side for a few breaths. Sometimes these earth element poses create sort of like a bubbling up of thoughts or emotions. And then we'll turn over onto the other side so we can find the same stretch on your other side. So right hand to the right foot, or you can do the variation where you're resting your top leg, your right leg on a prop. Feel free to use a strap. I also find sometimes these quad stretches, these earth element stomach spleen poses, they can create sort of a judgment or comparison about our practice and what our bodies can and can't do on this particular day. So just notice if that comes up for you. And then think about a body part that you're thankful for, like your lungs, your heart, your ears, your eyes, your feet. Do we have one or two more breaths here? And while I'm on the ground, I'm going to show you a variation for our next pose. So you can let go of your foot, lay on your side. And what we'll be doing next will be our last pose for the earth element. And we'll be doing lizard. However, if lizard doesn't feel good on your bottom knee, you can do lizard on your back. So this is the pose here with my left leg in a half happy baby and my right leg nice and long. This will get the meridians that we're looking for. So this is a nice way to do it if you enjoy being close to the ground or if your knees are feeling sensitive today. The other way to do it is to come more upright and then use a blanket under the knees and These are optional, but oftentimes I like to use blocks for my hands. So the version that's upright of the same pose of lizard would be to have the left foot forward, left foot's wide enough so both hands and arms, your torso can come onto the inside of the left leg. So choose the one that's best for you. I was going to say pick your poison, which doesn't sound very yogic, but it actually really fits with this idea of what we're doing here in the stomach and spleen. That sometimes we can overdo, we can take in a thought, an idea, a meal that doesn't quite sit right. Hang in there. We're not here near as long as we are in some of the other poses. Just about half as long. Three more cycles of your breath here. And then ease yourself out. If you're on your back, then I encourage Shavasana. If you're upright like I am, I encourage maybe lengthening that left leg to get a nice little hamstring stretch, or maybe even a downward dog might feel nice. And then in the next few breaths, we'll start to set up for the other side. So the right knee will be the one that's bent. You can do it on your back. You can do it upright. Find what's best for you, what would sit well for your system today. We all have sensitivities to certain things, whether it's sounds or light or certain foods. Just make sure that you're breathing. That you're not falling into that trap and stomach and spleen around self-judgment, comparison. We're almost there, about 3 breaths to go. We're ready to start coming out. Find whatever your body is asking for. The lengthening of the leg or Shavasana are just 2 suggestions. You find what works for you. And now we're ready to scooch into the last of the burners, so the third burner, which will be liver, kidneys. It's that elimination. So we'll start seated with some sort of prop underneath you if you'd like. So for me, 99% of the time, I'll be on a blanket when I come seated. And I kind of start fully on the blanket and then I scooch like I'm kind of halfway falling off the ledge. So just the back half of my rear is there. The focus for this area for our practice today is the inner part of your legs and or the back of the legs. So inner part of the legs and or hamstrings. A couple different ways that you can approach this that are equally as valid and effective. It just kind of depends on you. You can stay upright as you are and take your legs a little bit wider so that you're feeling the sensation upright, and that's a nice option. Others of you might not want to take the legs quite as wide. You may prefer to create the sensation from maybe 2 to 6 on our scale by coming forward. And coming forward might involve a prop such as a bolster, a piece of furniture. So what I like to offer when you're choosing here is that for some people, coming forward, if your back's already a little bit tired or grouchy today, then it might aggravate your back. So for those of you that are noticing your lower back, your better choice would be to stay upright and take the legs wider. Same pose, just two different ways to approach it. And then we're focusing on the breath. This lower burner is all about letting go, releasing that which does not serve us. That might be outdated beliefs about ourselves or others. It might be releasing a negative self-talk dialogue that we have. Letting go of our day. The letting go is just as important as the taking in. We can't have one without the other. One more breath. And we'll start to come out of the pose and set up for our second pose that works with liver, kidney, the water, and the wood element. And it will be reclined butterfly. Lots of different ways you can do reclined butterfly. I know many of you have your favorite way, so feel free to go directly to that position. I'll say for me, about half of the time I like to do reclined butterfly on a bolster or props so that I'm on a little bit of an incline. Sometimes that feels really good to me. Other times I prefer the floor. So whether or not you're using the floor or bolster, the pose otherwise will be the same. So the soles of the feet towards each other, knees bent in the butterfly. And then you're dialing in intensity that's appropriate for you. So more than likely using props, but however high or low or however much or little you want, then you're either reclining onto the bolster or reclining directly onto the floor. This is a pose that is definitely about release. It's about letting go. You can cover your body or your torso with a blanket if you'd like, a little bit of a weighted blanket quality. You could add extra props and turn this into a restorative pose if you prefer. Is there something that's been weighing heavy on your mind or your heart that maybe you feel ready to release? Even if it's not 100%, maybe you're ready to release 1% or 12% of the load. Or maybe even just the thought that maybe someday you'll release it is enough for today. Five more cycles of our breath here. If you want to assist that process of letting go, emphasize your exhales, either making them a little longer or stronger, more complete. And then when you're ready, we'll set up for final relaxation. That might be lengthening the legs and otherwise staying how you are. It might be completely rearranging into a shavasana or any other pose or shape that would best suit what you need. Feeling free to add a little warmth through socks or blankets or sweatshirts. Maybe dim the lights or put a little cloth over the eyes. Feeling free to stay as you are for as long as you'd like. For those of you that feel ready, you can begin to deepen your breath. Move a little through fingers and toes. Maybe make your journey toward upright now, or maybe you do that later. And I invite you to place your arms, your hands in a place that feels integrating for you. For me, that's typically hands at the heart, but sometimes it's hands on my lap. And I thank you for your practice of yoga.